How happy would you be if you never had to pay for gas or groceries ever again? Here's your chance. 2 winners each will receive free gas and groceries for a lifetime in the Gas and Groceries for Life raffle, presented by Thomas J. Henry. Free gas, free groceries, 2 winners. All net proceeds benefit elementary school children and local food banks. So get rolling, hit the gas, and purchase your raffle tickets at gasandgroceриesforlife.com today.
All right, Pickle, let's talk a little bit about the college football coaching carousel, and we will go in chronological order of the way that all of these things happened. So we will start a couple of weeks ago. And a couple of weeks ago, Texas State became the first Texas FBS team to have a coaching vacancy, as Jake Spavital was fired as the head coach at Texas State. He was fired on November 27th. That is after 4 seasons where they went 13-35 overall, 9-23 in the Sun Belt. This is ultimately, I think what ended up dooming Jake Spavital was he took a big swing. Whenever COVID came around, I think that he looked around and said, all right, this is an opportunity to try to leverage the transfer portal for our best efforts. I think you see this a decent amount, and it used to be that it would be just JUCO transfers, that it would be we need to get old quickly, so we're going to go and pick up a bunch of JUCO transfers. He kind of took that to the nth degree in the new normal of the transfer portal and say, we're going to grab a bunch of guys out of the portal. And there is a certain element that I think I understand.
SMU does a really good job with that. In
the sense that I think his thought was, and I don't want to speak for Coach Spavital, I think his thought was, why would I go and recruit these players from high school if once they get pretty good, they're just going to transfer out anyway? Why would I become a farm system for other teams?
Yep.
And there's some validation in that, and I think that speaks to a larger issue that we have with the haves and the have-nots in college football. But in the end, it didn't work. And one of 2 things has to happen if you're going to go that way. Either you have to win, or you have to backpedal and you have to try to repair the relationships. Because one of the things that it did was, I think it did not help him on the recruiting trail with Texas high school football coaches. Oh, you're the guy who doesn't come and recruit our guys. You're the guy who just goes to the portal. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but I think it's the reality of the situation. And the other thing is that he didn't win. Like, I know it's too cute by half, but he had 4 seasons and he won 13 games.
I'm going to be real honest that I think the most detrimental part of his entire thing, and I know that it put him in a tough situation, but his defense was always so bad, and that was under his brother's watch.
Part of it.
And I just think that when we finally started to see that offense pick up a little bit, we never once saw the defense to start picking up, and it's almost one of those things that it's your brother, and that's what you run the risk of hiring him, but I think that was the biggest downfall.
I think that's part of it. I think that overall they just never found any sort of consistency, never any sort of identity. Like, you can say that, like, there are programs out there that may not necessarily be getting the wins, but they have an identity, and Texas State didn't have the wins or the identity. They were kind of like, what are we going to be this year? And so that's problematic. So they fired Jake Spavital after 4 years. It was then reported exclusively by our own Mike Craven and Ishmael Johnson that Texas State on December 1st was planning to hire G.J. Kinne, the head coach at Incarnate Word. He is in his first year as the head coach at Incarnate Word. He is a former, I think it's worth mentioning, a former Dave Campbell's Texas football cover boy.
Yep.
He was on the cover with Earl Campbell and all those other high school quarterbacks when he was playing at Gilmer. A record-setting quarterback at Gilmer under Coach Jeff Traylor, which is rather interesting. He is known as an offensive whiz kid. He's known as kind of a hot young name. He was on the 40 on our 40 under 40 in the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. He took over for Eric Morris when Eric Morris left to go take the job as Washington State offensive coordinator. From what we understand, the other names in the mix were Morris and K.C. Keeler, the Sam Houston head coach. But in the end, it goes to G.J. Kinne. Now, there's a risk here, certainly, because he's only got 1 year of head coaching experience. And he's actually still in his first year of head coaching experience. Mm-hmm. In a very strange scenario, he got announced as the Texas State head coach, then went and coached Incarnate Word in the FCS playoffs on Saturday, and then went to Texas State and did photo shoots.
And was at the basketball game that night.
Did the basketball game, did kind of the PR rounds, and then he went back to Incarnate Word to game plan for the game this week.
Yeah, they're into the third round of the playoffs.
He's 33. He is now the youngest head coach in Texas, youngest FBS coach in Texas. And he's a guy who was an assistant under Chad Morris at SMU. He went to Arkansas with Chad Morris before he was an analyst for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was offensive coordinator at Hawaii before going and being offensive coordinator at UCF before getting the head coaching job at Incarnate Word. The offensive bona fides are there. He is an offensive whiz. And I think that what Texas State is looking for out of him is kind of what they've been waiting for a while, which is get that quarterback. Like what he's doing with Lindsey Scott Jr., I think, at Incarnate Word, I think is what they are expecting him to do at Texas State. Get us a quarterback. Because at the G5 level, in the Sun Belt, if you got a QB, you got a chance. And Texas State, just plain and simple, hasn't had that quarterback. So the question is going to be, can he find that quarterback, and can he develop him and get things going in that direction? I will be very interested to see who they hire from a defensive coordinator perspective. I think that'll be critical to the holistic nature of the program. But the one thing is, think about the last 3 hires, right, of FBS coaches in the state of Texas, right? Mm-hmm. Joey McGuire, Texas Tech, Sonny Dykes at TCU. I know he was at SMU, but there. Rhett Lashley at SMU, and then and now G.J. Kinne. All of them have Texas bona fides. Mm-hmm. All of them. Lashley is probably the most of an exception. Yeah. But I think he's still known. He had been within the program and at SMU for long enough to understand that he's got those ties. So that's the real coin of the realm here is, do you have those Texas ties? We'll see how it works out for G.J. Kinne there as he is the new head coach. And the other thing is, there's a guy who went and played for Tulsa, right? Yep. Or he so his first year at Texas, transferred to Tulsa, where he was a pretty darn good quarterback. He had a couple of years 5 years in the NFL, played in the CFL. Tulsa had a coaching opening as well.
Yeah, and that was the hot rumor for a long time, was that he was about
a natural
to
fit for Tulsa. Now, I don't know who told who no, but I think that's interesting. Anyway, that's what's going on at Texas State. So now Incarnate Word is open. We do have a list up there from our own Mike Craven of some names that could be connected to the Incarnate Word job. Ryan Carty is a name to know. Ephraim Banda, the Utah State defensive coordinator, is a name to know as well. He played at Incarnate Word. So keep an eye on all of them. So there you go. We got that up on Texas Football.
He won't have to move far. That's for sure. A couple miles.
That's right. And then there was Sunday night. And Sunday night, kind of as a lightning bolt out of the blue, we got word that North Texas had fired Seth Littrell after 7 seasons. Now, it's worth mentioning that the Jake Spavital firing at Texas State, hate to say it, not really a surprise. We had been hearing things for weeks about, hey, listen, this is probably going to be it for Jake Spavital, especially after it became clear they weren't going to make a bowl. Then I think they were like, all right, this is gonna do it for him. For North Texas, early in the year we were hearing rumblings, and then they started winning, and those rumblings went away, and the word we got was he was pretty safe. He was pretty safe. Seth Littrell was. He was going to get another year. It's really interesting that Seth Littrell gets fired for a couple of reasons. One, they did just play in the Conference USA Championship game.
which has an asterisk by it.
Did they
a
play?
Little bit.
Did they play in the Conference USA title game or not?
They did.
You either do or don't, and that is, I think, an achievement that he can hang his hat on, right? So there's that. The other interesting thing about this, North Texas doesn't have an athletic director right now.
Mm-hmm.
North Texas is, look, Seth Littrell's boss right now is an empty chair. Like, it's not, but you know what I mean. His direct report is an empty chair because Ren Baker left to go take the athletic director job at West Virginia. So they're looking for an athletic director right now. And that was another reason why we were thinking, okay, Seth Littrell is probably going to be safe, at least for now. Maybe when the new AD gets hired, they say, you know what, I want to bring in my own guy. I'm going to ditch Seth Littrell, bring in their own guy. But that figured it was going to come after an athletic director hire. Instead, it sounds like, and I know you have closer ties to North Texas than I do, it sounds like this was the president's call.
It was. It was Neil Simatras' call, the president of the university, which is exactly why I wasn't as shocked, I guess, as the rest of everyone seemed to be. Mm-hmm. From my take on it, I thought all year long that this was inevitable. Mm-hmm. I will say I think I was shocked that it came before the bowl game, but I was not shocked that it happened. Say what you will about all of this. Seth Littrell was a great head coach for North Texas. I'm not denying that at all. I was there during the pinnacle of those 3 years, and it was a lot of fun. What he did for the program was great, but I also
the second winningest coach in program history.
I also knew that from my interpretation, it was realistically Ren Baker was the one really putting up the fight for him and putting up the shields. The donors weren't super happy, I don't think. I don't think the administration was super happy. And so with Ren leaving, I did wonder, was this going to speed up the process a little bit of doing this? You have to look at it from an aspect of they're going into the American Athletic Conference, and I just didn't see a way with how a lot of the important people felt about him and what had happened. I didn't see a way that they wouldn't start to wipe the slate clean, especially when the news that Ren was leaving. Then it was like, okay, this might seem a little bit, and I know
bulwark is gone.
Yeah, and I know that there is a lot of opinion of there being unrealistic expectations and blah blah blah, and I'm not denying that at all. But I think that their reason, if you want what I think that the reasoning behind it was, is you can look at it like a normal job here. You have a goal and you surpass it for 3-4 years. Well, that puts a higher standard into place. Then maybe you have an off year. Okay. But the goal is to kind of get that back up to what it was. And I think that the biggest downfall for Seth Littrell in my mind was the fact that the recruiting didn't seem to always be at the head of his forte, especially when you're in the talent-rich part of DFW. You have to be better at keeping those kids in your own backyard, and I felt like that always wasn't necessarily there. And then you go and we played a couple of AAC teams, and we got absolutely blown out. So it's kind of one of those things that I didn't see it as a surprise that they let him go. I really genuinely did not.
I think if before the season you had told me that Seth Littrell was going to be fired at the end of the season, I would have been like, okay, yeah, that sounds right. I mean, I think he was on the hot seat last year before that late flurry that got them to a bowl game, and probably saved his job for a year there. I think that the details and context of it makes it a little more baffling, simply because they're like, who fired him? You know what I mean? Like this doesn't happen. The president doesn't come and fire the football coach. That just doesn't happen. But it sounds like this president, Neil Simatras, is pretty involved in athletics.
He is very involved in athletics. So that's the main reason why it didn't surprise me as much.
So he finishes 44-44 as his 7 seasons as head coach. He's the second winningest coach in North Texas history, and I think two things can be true. I think Seth Littrell is probably the second best coach, at least in the modern era of North Texas football.
Mm-hmm.
There's a coach that I'm just patently unfamiliar with, Otis Mitchell, who had it was the winningest coach. He won 69, 63, 14 years from the 50s and 60s. As far as the modern era is concerned, in my opinion, it's him and Hayden Fry.
Yep, absolutely.
Those are the two. I think that can be true. Mm-hmm. And I can also say that I think that at North Texas, they want the standard to be higher. Mm-hmm. I think there are powerful people who are investing in the program more now and demand more results, and they want to be a G5 power. Is that realistic? I think there's a healthy debate to be had in the offseason about whether or not that's realistic. Mm-hmm. But that's certainly what the powerful people want.
Well, and
they want the tide to be raised.
Right, and I think that you're spot on with both of those points, and I think that that's why a lot of other stuff that I've heard, like I know Craven had said, that he has never heard of a fan base being so obsessed with bowl wins or postseason wins, if you want to call it. North Texas is 0-7 under the Seth Littrell era. I have been at both conference championships, and we have gotten our doors blown off. This one was the most competitive one against UTSA, and then I think that that's a thing. Yes, how much stock do bowl games hold? Not a lot, but you have to start balancing out one or the other. If 9 wins is the standard that the unrealistic standard that people want to set, then if you're going to continue to be a 7-5 or a 6-6, you have to go into a bowl game and actually be competitive. Mm-hmm. And I think that the reason why North Texas fans are so obsessed with that postseason statistic with Seth never winning anything it wasn't even the fact that they walked up and it was competitive. They got their doors blown off in every single postseason game that they ever played in. Absolutely destroyed in every single one. And I think that that's part of, you've got to do one or the other. If you're going to go 7-5, that's fine. Go out there and at least be competitive in the bowl game.
So we've got a piece up on TexasFootball.com with 6 names, I think, to know candidates to replace Seth Littrell. Garrett Riley, the TCU offensive coordinator. Graham Harrell is a North Texas favorite. Everyone loves Graham Harrell.
They do. He was the OC when Mason was there.
It's because he's handsome.
Also that.
And TFT's own. Emmett Jones, a former Texas high school football coach who's now on the staff with Joey McGuire at Tech. Kenny Perry, who's also on the former Texas high school football coach. On the staff at Texas Tech. Joe Gillespie is a name to know. He's part of Sonny Dykes' staff over there at TCU, and then Justin Fuente, who was a TCU offensive coordinator before he went to Memphis, before he had a kind of an unflattering run at Virginia Tech. So those are a few names to know there for North Texas. We'll, of course, have complete coverage at TexasFootball.com. Our guys are working the phones, I'll tell you that much. So subscribe to Republic of Football.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you would like more and to be notified when they come out, go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there. You can also watch Texas Football Today every day live at noon on TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, and right here on YouTube. For more of the best coverage of Texas football in the Lone Star State, go to TexasFootball.com/subscribe.